motorcycles didn't ask, just took over. In the unfiltered world, a beast was born, Suzuki GSXR 1100. A missile on wheels, feared by many, tamed by few. If you didn't respect it, the asphalt would spit you out. Today, we journey to the heart of a legend that shaped an era. Are you ready? It began in 1986, and Suzuki broke the rules a year earlier with the GSXR 750. That bike didn't shake up the game, it rewrote the rules. Know when something works well, you want more. And Suzuki said, is the 750 good? What if we make one bigger, more displacement, more torque, fear at the throttle? And that's how the GSXR 1100 was born, a superbike on steroids and 2 strong coffees. It was the next logical step in the evolution of a beast that didn't just want to compete, wanted to dominate. In its original 1986 version, the GSXR 1100 came with a 152cc inline 4-cylinder engine, air and oil cooled thanks to the revolutionary Suzuki advanced cooling system. No conventional water radiators here. Suzuki designed an oil-cooled system, allowing for a more compact and lightweight engine block. A brilliant invention. That engine in its initial configuration delivered 125 horsepower, now reasonable, but at the time, it was a flying kick to the competition's chest. And the weight? About 197 kilos dry, which for an 1100 was like saying, hi, I'm light and I can rip your arms off if you lose focus. The chassis was also ahead of its time. While other brands were still playing around with heavy steel frames, the GSXR 1100 already featured a twin-spar aluminum frame directly inherited from Suzuki's endurance racing experience. The result? A much stiffer yet lighter package. You don't feel you're driving a container. It was like taking a sumo wrestler, putting on keto diet, injecting with amphetamines, letting loose on Suzuka circuit. And yes, it worked. The GSXR 1100 wasn't just fast in a straight line, it could also corner. Not like a modern 600, but for its time, its chassis was more than competent. It had adjustable suspension, ventilated disc brakes, and an aggressive riding position, but more comfortable than other superbikes. It was a usable bike, not just a wild beast. And that was key. You could take it to work or to hell. You chose. Most incredible is Suzuki didn't make this bike another model. The GSXR 1100 led the GSXR line for years. It was the top of the range, the ground-to-asphalt missile, the bike that told you, I'm not for just anyone. If you want me, tame me. And that's how the legend began. In 1989, Suzuki didn't sit still. They said, improve it, let's make this thing scary even when it's turned off. And that's how the GSXR 1100K came out. It was no longer 1052. Now it was 1,127 cubic centimeters. Yes, the engine grew, and not just in size, but also in personality and torque. The result was a delivery of 143 horsepower. And the best part was, you didn't have to rev it up to 12,000 RPM for it to pull like a train. You had power from low down. It was like having a locomotive that woke up just by twisting the throttle a little. That new engine block came more robust, with better materials and a more efficient combustion chamber design. It wasn't just bigger. It was better designed to withstand heat, vibrations, and the rough treatment from users who didn't know the meaning of moderation. Stronger chassis, inverted fork, and a racing soul. Suzuki also revised the chassis. The aluminum twin spar frame was now reinforced, wider in certain critical areas, and with optimized geometry for better high-speed stability. They added an inverted Kayaba fork, stiffer and more precise, which improved the feel and allowed for later braking without the front end diving like jelly. The rear suspension also evolved with an adjustable monoshock that helped tame the 143 horsepower when the rear wheel wanted to change lanes on its own. And the brakes? Double 310mm discs up front with 4-piston calipers. They weren't Brembos, but they did the job. Sometimes. Visually, the GSXR 1100K was already starting to leave behind the straighter lines of the 80s to fully embrace the 90s era. Now we had a sharp, more aerodynamic and aggressive front end like, I've got problems and I want to solve them with my fists. The entire fairing became more muscular, with angular lines, more pronounced air intakes, and a silhouette that was no longer just about speed, it was about intimidation. The colors were also a spectacle. Combinations of white, blue, black, red, and even some wild additions with yellow. In 1991, the M version arrived, and that's when Suzuki didn't just improve things, they started fine-tuning it like a violent violin. The combustion chambers were redesigned to improve efficiency and smooth out the response at low revs. The carburetor was upgraded to 40 millimeters, giving the engine better breathing, more torque, smoother power delivery, and fewer jolts if you were clumsy with your right hand. The suspension improved. Greater adjustability, better performance over bumps and in fast corners. The chassis also received additional reinforcements to control the power on more technical sections. It was as if the bike was saying, you want to go fast? I'll go with you, but do it right. And the experience? Brutal, but noble. It wasn't just fast, it was brutal. But the best part was that it was still usable. It wasn't a pure, uncompromising track car. You could ride it to work if you liked arriving with your heart pounding 1,000 beats per minute. For many, this stage of the GSXR 1100 is the best blend of power and usability, of wildness and nobility. A bike that forgave your mistakes but didn't hesitate to show its wild side if you thought you were Valentino Rossi when you weren't. We arrived. At 1992, and Suzuki releases the N version, which many consider the last great real evolution of the model before its slow decline began. The engine was still the 127cc block, but now with Mikuni BST 40mm carburetors tuned even better. The result: power delivery became more linear, less jittery, but just as powerful. 143 horsepower, but now more usable. You could go fast without having to wrestle with the clutch or do yoga before getting on. The electronics for the Spark also improved. Traction control? No. ABS? Neither. But at least the ignition was more precise. The idle was more stable, and spark plug consumption didn't leave you bankrupt. The chassis received small but important tweaks. The aluminum twin-beam frame was optimized for torsional rigidity, and some reinforcements were redistributed to improve handling in fast corners. The internal components of the inverted fork were also improved, with a greater range of adjustment and better hydraulic response. The progressive rear suspension was also recalibrated. What does that mean? It means you could lean it over more, brake harder, and not end up in the hospital. Well done, Suzuki. Visually, it kept the 90s look. Muscular lines, a more angular twin front headlight, a high tail section, and that huge exhaust that looked like a missile launcher. A bike that looked big, intimidating, and had a lot of presence. Attention, In 1993, Suzuki did something big and controversial. It changed the soul of the GSXR 1100. The legendary air and oil-cooled engine was retired, and a water-cooled engine arrived. Boom! This is where the W era begins the GSXR 1100W. Why that change? Simple. Emissions regulations, more power, better thermal control, and the need to compete against more modern bikes like the YZF 1000R Thunder Ace or the Honda CBR 900 Fireblade, which already had liquid-cooled engines and more technology. The new engine block kept the 127 cubic centimeters, but with significantly redesigned chambers, more aggressive camshafts, and liquid cooling. Now the engine produced about 155 horsepower, and although it was heavier than the previous one, it was also more stable in terms of temperature and more refined at high revs. And how did it ride? Like a bullet train on steroids. But of course, the weight went up by about 10 or 15 kilos more. It was no longer that agile and brutal Gixxer from the 80s. Now it was more of a sporty GT than a pure R, but even so, it was still a beast. The frame also changed. Now it was a completely new double-beam aluminum frame, wider and more robust. The inverted fork was also improved, and the braking system received Tokiko 6-piston calipers, which helped to stop the more than 230 kilos in running order that this beast weighed. Yes, it was no longer a featherweight, but on highways or fast stretches, nothing could touch it. So we come to the epilogue of the saga. Between 1996 and 1998, Suzuki kept the GSXR 1100 alive with minor updates. In the WT and WV models, the engine received slight ignition adjustments, improvements to oil injection, a more robust clutch, and tweaks to the rear suspension to enhance cornering traction. Visually, little changed. New graphics, some sharper fairings, and colors that were more 90s than ever. We're talking about bright reds, purples, pearly whites, and even combinations worthy of arcade video games. But the market changed. The problem was something else. By 1996, the Honda CBR 900RR Fireblade already existed. The Yamaha Roan was about to be released, and the world wanted lighter, more radical, and more electronic bikes. The GSXR 1100 was already a dinosaur. Powerful, yes. Legendary, too. But heavy, big, and outdated compared to the new generations. In 1998, Suzuki said enough and closed the chapter. There was no direct successor. The big Gixxer disappeared forever, at least under the 1100 name. Despite its end, its legacy was tattooed into history. It was the first superbike with an aluminum frame that revolutionized the segment in 1986. It showed that you could have track-level performance in a street bike. It inspired entire generations of sport bikes, both from Suzuki and other brands. Today, it is a collector's item. Many seek out the 86 and 89 models for their purity. Others go for the W models for their sheer brutality. And the final fact, there are still thousands of them on the road, and many continue to put current sport bikes to shame in straight-line acceleration. And if you want to get to know its little sister, the GSXR 750, just go ahead and click on this video for more details to learn even more right now. And I will see you there.